Good morning, Jim. Vince Ferrara and Mike Griffith. Great to have you with us. How you doing, Jim?
I'm very well. How are you?
We're doing great, Jim. Thank you so much for the time. And we'll start with, for our fans that maybe have not seen Timothy Bradley before, who is Timothy Bradley, who's fighting in this weekend's HBO pay-per-view, Manny Pacquiao versus Timothy Bradley. Tell us a little bit about Timothy Bradley.
Timothy Bradley's a guy from the Inland Empire of California, the area, Pomona, Riverside, and the desert area out by Palm Springs. He's a very athletic fighter, not a lot of punching power, but unbeaten at 140 pounds. And he made a very controversial decision, turning down a fight for the supremacy of the 140-pound weight class more than a year ago, when he had been offered 50% of the purse to fight Amir Khan, which was actually a tremendous favor to Bradley because Khan was the one who brings the money. And he was eager to fight Bradley to try to prove he was the best at 140. And Bradley turned down by far the biggest paycheck of his career to leave a promoter who had built his career to this point, Gary Shaw, and go to another promoter, Top Rank, for the specific purpose of getting a fight with Manny Pacquiao. And he did. So he risked a lot and gave up a fair amount in terms of personal relationships and background to get this fight. And now, increasingly, as we get closer to the fight, more and more boxing writers and ringside experts are beginning to lean toward Bradley because there are so many questions about Pacquiao which have been raised by his approach in training and his new approach to his life in the wake of the Marquez fight.
Jim Lampley from HBO Sports joining us here. It's Pacquiao versus Bradley at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, Saturday night, 9 o'clock Eastern, starts the HBO pay-per-view. And Jim, you mentioned Manny Pacquiao and the questions that people are raising about him, and a lot has been revealed about his personal life and gambling and other things in his personal life that he has removed. Do you have a feel for maybe how that might impact him, if at all, in the ring?
Well, he's a person who has thrived on chaos. I mean, I've said for years, if you want to know how complicated Manny Pacquiao's life is, just take Mike Tyson's life, put it in a blender, and multiply by 3. I mean, he has by far the most complicated existence I've ever seen for any public figure. And the fact that he has managed to thrive and accomplish what he's accomplished in the ring, given everything that he has put himself through in the Philippines, in the United States, in the conduct of his boxing career, in dealing with the powers that be in the sport. It's just amazing that he has been able to focus and concentrate and accomplish what he's accomplished in the ring amid constant chaos outside the ring. To this day, he's so accustomed to the rhythms and the lifestyle of his deep poverty background that when he arrives in Vegas to prepare for the fight, he accumulates as many as a dozen friends, hangers-on, bystanders who live in the room with him because he's not accustomed to being alone. And incidentally, neither is Floyd Mayweather. That's something that they share very much in common. And when you consider the level of chaos that exists in Manny's life just as the result of his day-to-day relationship with the Filipino community and the degree to which he tries to reach out to people in poverty, in distress, et cetera, it is quite bizarre. So to see him try to put all that aside to a certain degree and attempt to, get his life into a manageable area and to ditch a lot of the elements of his life that have kept him off the straight and narrow, it just leads you to wonder, all right, if the chaos is gone, where's Manny Pacquiao? Because the fighter who has done everything that he's done and accomplished what he's accomplished has done that against the constant backdrop of a life of impenetrable chaos. And if he changes all that and gets it under control, what does that do to the fighter in the ring? That's the question that everybody's asking.
It is fascinating. Jim Lampley from HBO Sports joining us. You can catch and find out more about Manny Pacquiao and his life. 24/7 Pacquiao Bradley this Friday night. It's the finale of that, an unbelievable series. And Jim, you've seen the 24/7 series. It's been branched out and copied in other facets by other networks. Talk about that series and its development and how fascinating it is to see the life and the build-up to the fighters leading up to a big pay-per-view event.
Well, I've always said what bonds people to boxing is not just what happens in the ring, but all of the things that they go through in their lives and in their very specific kind of training to get into the ring. And over the years, since it was initiated as a means of promoting pay-per-view fights, 24/7 has demonstrated that and has shown that to people. And, if you watch 24/7, then you get a sense of why all the movies and the literature and what have you revolve around boxing as opposed to other sports, because this is the most accessible kind of human combat. We all live in such a way that at some point or another we experience in our daily lives a fight. Maybe not a physical fight, maybe not, a need to get past somebody physically or best them in order to continue the conduct of our lives. But all of us at some point or another face some conflict or some resistance, which we can identify as something that we have to deal with from our guts, from a place of courage, from a place of commitment. That's what a fight is. And that's what fighters do. And that's why every fan who ever sits down in front of a television set and watches a boxing match has a sense somewhere inside, I know what's happening here. I can see this. I understand it. And not everybody feels that about, every other sport with all of their organizational trappings. This is something that comes straight from deep within us. And that's why people watch boxing matches. But it isn't just the fight. It's everything that brings you to the fight and everywhere that it takes you once the fight is over. And 24/7 shows a lot of that.
For someone that is looking for a reason to pick Timothy Bradley in this fight, separate from everything that Manny Pacquiao is going through in those intangibles that you outlined and articulated, what are some of the skill sets of Bradley that could potentially, best case scenario, give Manny Pacquiao some problems?
Well, he's the most frequent butter in the sport. To say that he's probably guilty of more accidental headbutts over the course of the last 10 years than even Bernard Hopkins is saying a lot. He's a lot like Evander Holyfield. He leads with his head, and it's a big head, and it gets in the way of people. And the bottom line is Manny Pacquiao doesn't like blood. Many fighters don't, but he very strikingly and particularly doesn't like blood. In his only loss on American soil, the only fight he's lost in the last 11 years to Eric Morales, he was accidentally butted in about the 4th or 5th round and bled from his forehead for the rest of the fight, and there was no question that it compromised his performance. So if that has been the case for several Bradley opponents, Pacquiao manages to find that his head gets involved accidentally with Bradley's head, and oh no, there's a butt, and it's Manny who bleeds, then that's a big factor in the fight. He has demonstrated on more than one occasion that inhibits his fighting style, and so that's point one that everybody's looking for is can Manny Pacquiao, a constant go forward attacker with a whirling dervish style inside, somehow keep his head from getting engaged with the one guy in the sport who has the highest level of accidental butts. That's a big factor in the fight.
Joined by Jim Lampley from HBO Sports will be on the call. Pacquiao versus Bradley, MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, Saturday night, 9 o'clock Eastern Time on HBO pay-per-view. Jim also hosting a new studio show on HBO called The Fight Game with Jim Lampley. The next episode, the second one, you'll be able to see June 16th at midnight Eastern Time. That's after HBO's World Championship Boxing, where Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. will defend his title against Andy Lee. You get asked this all the time. Will we ever see a Manny versus Money Mayweather fight, Jim?
Well, I mean, we're probably not going to see it if Manny doesn't get past Bradley. So the immediate question right now is Is he going to beat Timothy Bradley? And as I say, the odds are narrowing, and Bradley has other things to bring to the party just besides the accidental butting habit, which is he's very athletic, has a lot of stamina. He's a grinder. He has a good chin. He's not going to be easy for Manny to knock out, and Manny hasn't had a knockout in 3 fights. So, it's an even competition, or at least more so than Pacquiao fans might want it to be. But assuming that Manny wins the fight, I think there's a greater chance for the fight for Pacquiao Mayweather now than was the case a few months ago, for the simple reason that the two fighters are apparently talking to each other, that they've had at least one and maybe 2 or 3 telephone conversations about the prospect of trying to make the fight. And this is the one way that we have the best chance of getting the fight to happen, is if these two guys momentarily put their promoters aside, leave the golden boy top rank thing out, and reach an agreement between themselves as to how they can split up the money. That's the way that we might see the fight. And oh, by the way, what an opportunity Pacquiao has right now. If he beats Bradley, he should go directly to the Las Vegas jail and get in line for visiting hours and become Floyd Mayweather's frequent visitor at the jail. How did Ali Frazier 1 get made more than 40 years ago? It got made because Joe Frazier went behind the scenes and took it upon himself to try to persuade the powers that be that Ali ought to be allowed to fight him. Frazier made the fight take place. Pacquiao has a chance right now to build a bridge to Mayweather, who is sitting still and is a captive audience that could help us to see the fight.
Jim, we had a off-air caller ask, if and when that fight happens between Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao, who do you think wins?
I've always thought that Mayweather would win the fight. I've always thought that the geometry of the fight argues very strongly in Mayweather's favor. I've particularly felt that the last couple of years as Manny has begun to grind down, fighting bigger fighter after bigger fighter after bigger fighter. And I know that that's what Floyd has been waiting for to make victory even more certain for him, is that Manny gets more and more ground down and isn't the same physical force that he was 2.5 years ago. However, Mayweather against Cotto for the first time showed some signs of cracking. He got into a physical firefight. It wasn't the fight he was supposed to be fighting. He stood his ground. He took some punishment. Those body shots that Miguel Cotto landed, they last for a while. I found myself in the 8th or 9th round of Cotto Mayweather for the first time in a couple of years thinking that Manny would have a chance. And because Mayweather got tagged in that fight. And as Nassim Richardson, the great trainer of Shane Mosley and Bernard Hopkins, said to us in a fighter meeting, that, talking idly about this, he said, hey, everything's pretty normal against Manny Pacquiao right up until the moment when he touches you. But something special happens when he touches you with his hands. And the bottom line is, we still don't know what's going to happen to Floyd Mayweather if Manny Pacquiao ever gets to touch him with his hands. And as I said, in the Cotto fight for the first time in a couple of years, I started thinking that Manny might have a chance.
Jim Lampley from HBO Sports joining us. Pacquiao versus Bradley in Las Vegas, Saturday night, 9 o'clock on HBO pay-per-view. Jim, if you had the opportunity, if you were given the top seat in boxing and you were in charge of improving its popularity, improving the success, how would you do so in boxing if you had, well, where would you start?
8 weight classes, 1 governing body, 8 champions, start over. That would be my one initial edict. Eliminate the confusion, get rid of the 16 weight classes, get rid of the 48 or 64 or however many recognized champions you want to call it, depending on how many bogus governing bodies you want to recognize. Just eliminate all of it. If we could somehow have an independent authority, completely unrelated to boxing politics. Say it was Ring Magazine back in the old days when Ring Magazine wasn't owned by a promoter, which it now is. We have problems, but if you give me, omniscient power or omnipotent power, and I can do whatever I want, then I take us back to 8 weight classes, 1 champion, and start from there.
Jim, really appreciate it. Such an honor for me to talk to you. Love the sport. Watch you guys all the time, and thank you so much for the time.
second edition of the Fight Game will happen live from El Paso immediately following Chavez versus Andy Lee next Saturday night, the 16th.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim.